Leave Minnesota when probation ends. Yeah, I mean, that's on the menu. There are ways I could leave before with permission. You have to get your probation transferred to another state and stuff. I don't know. Checking my test status today. Do not test today. There we go. The testing schedule on this, and I think this is a trap for a lot of people. You know, probation, the people talk about probation being just set up for you to fail. And it is in a lot of ways set up for people to fail, but it's not set up for everybody to fail. It's set up for people with certain behaviors or whatever to fail. And but one of the things that has been crazy about probation so far is like just how rare the random testing has been for me. I think it's less than once a week. I've only had 2 random tests. One of them wasn't random. It was right after I got back from Vegas, and I expected fully to be tested the next day. And so, you know, I don't think that was random. I think they intentionally set that up, which is fine. I talked to my probation officer about it, of course, and asking permission to leave the state, because I was like, look, I don't know how you handle the drug testing if I leave the state. Like, I don't know what you need me to do. And she basically said, you know, you just call in and do your checkup that you normally have to do. And if a test comes up, we'll push it manually to the next day after you're back. Otherwise, you know, we'll just probably have you tested in anyway. So I know that, you know, they manually do it. They can put their finger on the scale, so to speak, of the randomness of it. But when I was on the random testing schedule before, I mean, it was 3 to 5 a week. And now it's been, well, we're a month in, I've only had to do it twice. So it's crazy. Hair test costs like $500. They just take your analysis. Yeah. So the test I do is not an instant test. It's just it's a 15 panel plus fentanyl, which is like it just monitors for the most things of the tests that they have available, and costs like $33. But like I said, there's no instant results. Everything, you know, they just send it off to the lab. You don't find out until. I haven't seen the results of any of them. They're all clean, I would assume, because if they weren't, I'd be getting my ass kicked right now. So far, probation is not that bad. I was surprised, you know, like the requirements for it. Like I have to meet with my probation officer 4 times a year. So by and large, if you're complying with probation, you really don't have much to do. Oh, but what I was saying before, how I got on the subject, the lax testing schedule, I think is to lull people into this idea that they can maybe beat the test. Right? Because like, okay, so I've gone 4 weeks and had 2 tests that were quite a decent ways apart. Well, if that keeps going for a while, some people might think, okay, well, I know now if I test one day, I could probably, like, I'm not going to have that random test twice. Like that, they just don't do that. It's too, it's rare. But then I'm sure they will hit you with a double test, right? Like, it's crazy. Do they do spinal tap tests? I'm not aware. I mean, I would assume that one could be ordered. I assume the judge could order any type of test. I don't think that's a common order out there. The common orders that they have are urinalysis, hair follicle tests if they need to establish a panel. They will sometimes do the sweat patch tests. But what I've learned from my own experience is that basically everybody involved hates the sweat patch tests. I mean, probation officers, not mine, like not my, I haven't talked to my PO about sweat patch testing, but I'll say it was a private conversation, so I don't want to say who they were, but I've talked to a couple different probation officers, and they say they don't trust them, the sweat patch tests at all. And so because every single time they do them, they get a false positive. And then, their clients, they call their parolees clients, swear up and down that they're not using. And they end up, they have relationships. You build a relationship with your PO to some extent, and they end up, believing their client over the tests, the sweat patch tests. And the county workers in our family case expressed that they don't like the sweat patch tests, and the judge expressed the same thing. So it's those are not heavily favored, but they're available. I would assume blood tests may be available. I don't know why. Maybe if someone has just a ton of problems peeing in front of people, a nervous bladder or whatever, and they would prefer a blood test, maybe they're available, but I don't think so. I think the main ones that they do are just urinalysis, which is good because urinalysis is about the most reliable form of testing that exists for drugs. Again, people, until you've gone through the system or someone who's gone through the justice system involving drugs, it's not entirely criminal, right? It could be family and stuff like that. But until you've dealt with it and had to experience drug testing firsthand and review it and all that stuff, people just assume it's you just you pee into a cup and they press a button on a machine and tells them what drugs that you took. But it's not, it doesn't work that way at all. It's actually a very complicated process that's really boring to explain. And it's also, it's not only not perfect, it's in a lot of ways, it's just not good. But urinalysis is the most consistently correct drug testing method that they have. And it's the most reliable one. Hair follicle testing is somewhat reliable, but it only shows exposure. It doesn't show use. And so courts don't really like it that much because they can't say if they can do a hair follicle test, they can't say that someone actually used it. Drug cops, for example, will test positive on hair follicle tests for all sorts of things. Exposure to drugs through the hair follicle doesn't mean ingestion of drugs. And so it's a very difficult thing for them to use as a prosecution method, if that makes sense. And it's why a bunch of, Robert Barnes talked about this when I was first dealing with it. He talked about it on Viva and Barnes. It's why a lot of private companies disfavor using hair follicle testing, because it's not reliable in saying when someone used or even if they used. It's just shows that there was exposure at sometime typically within the past 90 days, which you can get exposure to drugs in a whole lot of ways without ever doing them. Snowy Hurricane, did they ever put you on the ankle monitor reader? No, I was never on any. First of all, I paid to have no I put up an unrestricted bond. But that wouldn't have been part of my restrictions either. So I was not required to have an ankle monitor. I was never on house arrest, so I don't, that wasn't necessary. Psycho Crusher 69 says, did the cops use a leaf blower to sweep your house for the snow? I would explain the hair follicles test results. Yes. Yes, they did. They're like, oh my God, we got to dig down through this. It was their fault we had laundry on the floor. Grifty says the entire war on drugs is a scam originally meant to oppress blacks that morphed into a cash grab. Don't even get me started on drug dogs. Oh, the canine units. The over propagandized canine units. They're amazing. Again, everybody shows like who went, what was is John Mateus. Am I pronouncing that right? I hope so. Who we interviewed the other day. I think he was talking about I think it was him. He was talking about how CSI has made people believe a lot about law enforcement and crime scene well, a crime scene investigation and investigation in general, it's given this generalized sense of all these magic arrows that the police have at their disposal. Canine units are one of them. When they do double-blinded canine tests, the dogs do not perform well at all. And that by double-blinded canine tests, what I mean is that the canine officer is unaware of where the contraband is. Once they do that, the dogs perform barely better than humans. Has a drug dog ever not hit on a car they pulled over? I mean, when I was coming back from an international flight one time, I watched them use it was the agriculture dog looking for contraband food, I guess. I watched them take that dog up to a bag. The dog looked at the bag and then just went away. And then the cop was like, and went back and indicated towards the bag. And then the dog sniffed in it and they're like, okay, we got to search this thing. And then they grabbed it. And it was like, bro, that the dog didn't actually hit on that bag. The cop did. But they needed the dog to indicate so that they would generate sufficient cause. Chat full of cope. Drug dogs are super accurate. They aren't, but that's okay. Here's the thing. Drug dogs' accuracy is related really to the intuition of the canine officer. And cops get really good at figuring out when and where they'll find something, right? Because there are only so many brilliant things you can do. So many brilliant places you can hide something in any vehicle or whatever. People who are stashing or storing contraband materials for short-term use or whatever, if it's personal rather than a dealer can do all sorts of stuff if they're carrying transporting a large amount of material and they don't need to have access to it. But for someone who wants access to the contraband, there are only so many places in a car that you can try and hide something. And so cops know where the hidden stuff might be automatically. One of my acquaintances, I guess, is a former state trooper. And he told me the Crown Royal bags, they would always find meth. If there was a Crown Royal bag in a car, they knew there was going to be meth inside that bag. I don't know why that purple Crown bag always had meth in it. And so, they would look for those, their flashlight in the car. Is everybody okay? How are you guys doing? I pulled you over. They'd look for those Crown Royal bags. And that would indicate to them that there, is probably meth in the car. And so then they would backwards search, we'll say, for sufficient cause to then inspect the car. If they could generate enough probable cause to do a search or get consent for a search, they would go right to the Crown Royal bag and find meth.
Mail yourself an empty priority mailbox. Once it has postmark, put your stuff in it and tape it up before you leave the house. Mail has extra protections against search. Can't hide my micropene, though.
That's 5. Mail actually doesn't have, well, I guess it depends where it is, but mail running through the postage system doesn't have extra protections against search. It actually has less protections. It's a warrant exception because it's a movable object that is supposed to keep going, similar to a car. So mail doesn't have the same Fourth Amendment protections. However, received mail that is in a home, which is what you're talking about, might have a little bit of a different protection.